like to watch this as well, so Carlos has volunteered to record it all, and we'll get this posted up and give them access to the class as well. Also have some long-term goals coming up. I wanted to mention that hopefully the beginning of September, we're going to have a Flash Developers Conference here internal at IGT, so that should be something to look forward to coming up. Hopefully you'll have some good, well-coded AS3 to show off. I know you'll have some good Python by then. So any questions between last class and now? Really?
I have one question.
Yes, Ben.
Should we download the x86 version of Python or the 64?
What Windows are you running?
That's 7. So
Well, yeah, but there are two versions of that too. So
30.
it's internal, so probably 64. And that's a really good question because some modules may have trouble running in a 64-bit environment. So that kind of begs the question. I know I'm going to start talking about Python variables today. So 1 and 0, that's a Boolean. 0 and 1 takes up 1 bit. What's the difference between a bit and a byte? Speak out. What's the difference between a byte and a word?
Word is 2 bytes.
Always. Hello? That was what Ben's question was, right? He was asking 32-bit or 64-bit word length. Learn something new every day. So we're talking about,
When
yes.
you ask a question and somebody kind of mumbles an answer in the corner of the room, could you just like repeat what the right answer was?
I will do my very best.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I tried running a pip install and it just gave me issues relative to saying install.
Oops, sorry. So pip install Google chart. So it didn't look like this?
Nope.
Okay, so if you type pip, do you get a pip error that looks like that?
I type pip. It just sits there.
I have a question.
It does nothing? Is this
It
an
said, oh, it said you did not provide a command.
Yeah, that's what mine said, so.
Ah,
You can just type pip.
Did you install the active?
yes. Did you install active state Python or did you install some other kind of Python in some other fashion? If you use the Windows installer, it makes pip available for you.
Yeah.
So I can help you troubleshoot that. Carlos.
I was just wondering if anyone else is having issues with getting set up, because this is such an important step.
Yes.
Maybe we should do something like during lunch in the break room, or maybe organize a little bit one-on-one.
Office
sort of
hours.
Getting exactly office
Yes.
hours, getting started.
SharePoint 2 for asynchronous hooking up, hopefully we'll have a place for everybody because there'll be a lot more questions, I promise. I'd also like to introduce some Python people. How many of you actually know how to use Python right now? There's at least 2 hands in this room other than me.
One behind you.
All right. We got some people going. Ask. It's all about us working together to increase the knowledge of Python to everybody here. I know there are prod people here. I know there are dev people here. Everybody's important. I want everybody to come up to speed. So I will help you with your pip issue, not right this second. Any other questions? Okay, so moving right along. I wanted to stick with the book, see if we can go through these sections as I've laid out. What I gave you for homework was 1.3, 1.3.5, and 1.4. So we'll start with 1.3 and we'll move forward from there. I do suggest reading the whole thing. I pretty much didn't want to use a book. I wanted to start from scratch and write it myself, but you know what? Somebody else got there and did good enough for the time frame I had to deal with it. So this is open source, MIT license. Yay, happiness. No semicolons. right? Anybody still wanting to use semicolons in Python at this time? Yeah, okay, cut it out. We talked about indentation and comments. I wanted to mention again that in the style guide it specifically talks about indentation, and we use 4 spaces. I had someone ask me this week about this convention here. This is definitely correct. If you put something on this line, the next line here after a parenthesis needs to line up with this. It just does. See how nicely that lines up? If you're not going to have enough room and still make 80 columns, we bump here at this parent and come in 4 spaces here. I also wanted to mention that parentheses in Python mean you can break anywhere in between. So I'll show you. I really like having an interactive prompt so easily. Right? So because of the parenthesis, I was money. If I tried to do it without, of course, it's not going to fly. Parentheses are your friend. If you're hitting that 80 column mark and you don't know what to do, shove a parenthesis in front of what you're doing and put it down on the next line. There is the option of using a slash. It's the other slash, which is a line continuation. This is out of style. Don't do that. It works. There's a bunch of stuff that works in Python that we don't do. It's kind of like that.
Michael, is
Yes.
there any way, is it possible for us to raise the projection a little bit? Because it's kind of hard to see what you're typing because of the,
How about I try and deal with that better?
okay.
Let's pick this up. Go like this. And let's see if we can bump this font up. Oh, Windows. No is the answer. So there you have it. I don't think it'll give it to me on that other one.
You're just using the regular command prompt, right?
Yeah, just a normal command prompt. I
Did you
could do it.
restart something after you install Python?
But you'll at least have to reopen your command window. Anyway, so I can't make it bigger right this second because I'm an idiot, but that's okay, we'll get to it. Or I blame Bill Gates, one of the two. So any other, I know you probably didn't read it, but anybody have any questions about style? Okay. Yes,
The
go.
thing about the shebang line, can we just ignore that for Windows?
Yeah. The interesting thing is that it wouldn't do anything, right? And
Right.
yet it would still make it compatible on more platforms.
Okay.
So in theory, if you included it now, let me addendum that, Google took it all out because their compilers are now smart enough to recognize that, right? Because the shebang line's just for Linux, and the compiler really doesn't care what operating system it's running on. So that's kind of an interesting discussion. Good? Somebody's been doing his homework.
The first entry in this thing said something about some pi checker.
Yeah, PyChecker. It's like lint. Same. Oop. I haven't typically used it. I use lint in good tests, but I should probably look into it now that I'm not running at Google because this was built into my compiler.
Okay.
Did you try it?
I haven't tried it. I just saw it. It's like the first thing they say in this whole document is like run pi checker. It's like,
Yeah, if you're linting, yeah, it is similar to lint. Ta-da! So lint just updated to a new version, so I'm super pleased with lint's updates lately. So that's why I don't run that, because I run lint. But feel free, knock yourself out.
and what will it do?
just what lint does.
Which if you haven't used.
Style check, except in theory it does function check as well to make sure that your functions are properly laid out or whatever.
Like spell check code.
Yeah, that's the right idea.
So all of these things that
Flex.
are listed in here will be enforced by that?
That's the best question in the world. Most lint is PEP 8, not Google specific, so your class names may throw. But other than that, the Google specification is pretty close, and that was definitely something. We get to names and tokens next, which is what I was really, really hoping to talk about. So yes. Any other questions relative to layout?
You said that we were gonna find when we went through, and if we looked at both Pepe and the Google style, we would find difference. Like
There is
difference
one
between the
very
two?
specific
There's
difference.
a very specific one. Yeah, I looked through a lot of it. I could find some minor ones, but I didn't really see any.
Fantastic
really
for
big
you.
ones.
It was more of a needle in a haystack hunt, because then you would memorize more. I'm a jerk.
All right.
You're welcome.
Are you gonna go over that difference? Is it
We're going to
very
do
relevant?
naming convention here shortly, which is the biggest one.
Okay.
In fact, they just went back to 4 spaces. Google did, which is interesting. All right, so let's get a move on. Allowed characters in a name, A through Z, 0 through 9, underscore, and must begin with a letter or underscore. I mean, right? Does anybody not? Okay, we don't use camel case in variables in Python. How's that? Most of you are Java or previous. So I'll give you some examples of names, which we'll see a bunch more later, but I'm not going to do a bunch. So this is a variable. Ooh, I can't even spell. Okay, that's money. I'm totally happy with that variable name. Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor?
I'm all for one.
All opposed? Yes, thank you. And no, bad. Okay, now I can make one small change and it's okay.
Underscore.
Isn't that for a class name or something? No, object.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Don't do it this way. I'm just talking about the variable name itself. In both standards, class names are capped in this fashion. If we look at any of my code, which I'll bring up in the background here, you'll see that all my variables are named in this fashion. This is a variable 1. That's a variable. That's just a normal variable that I'm using to put stuff in as I'm going. Let's say b equals 2. What about that? Good for style?
No.
Oh, who said no? Yeah, okay, why?
They should have more than one letter unless it's like a counter, like an iterator or something.
I really like you. Okay, so I was raised on BASIC. 4i equals 1 to 10. I mean, I was raised on that. So I to me is an integer variable, right? Horrible. Don't use it ever. It's really rough for me sometimes not to use it because it just comes out of my fingers as I go. And the reason is because if I'm reading your code, I have no idea what I represents, right? This is a variable, actually a pretty good name, right? It tells me what I'm trying to do. So we're going to look at more code as we go. Name your variables more than X, Y, Z, P, D, Q, right? Horrible names.
You
Name
wouldn't
things
use
really
I for
well.
an iterator,
I wouldn't.
even though the rest of the world does it that way.
ITR?
If I had a list, okay, I have a list of numbers. Right, that doesn't tell me what that list is.
Well, I agree with that, but every in a for loop, I mean, that's just everyone uses I, J, and K for.
I'm using people. I know they do.
And it's
People,
very
1, 2,
short.
3, 4. Short is not my goal, ever.
I agree. I'm
Readability
just
is
saying
my
for an
goal.
iterator.
I'm with you.
For I equals 1 to 10. That's
So if I were to loop across this, I am way ahead in the text. I apologize to any of you who have no clue what I'm talking about. But how would I iterate across this? Variable names is what I'm talking about here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the 4 people, right? And now when I go 1, 2, 3, 4, what am I doing? Person, 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 person. So person and people. I mean, really, when I read this, I know exactly what I'm doing. If it's for I in X, what am I doing? Zero clue. You have no clue what I'm doing. And that's really bad for someone like me who's senior, who's trying to read all of your code. Because I'm trying to, right, in theory, I'm code reviewing 10 people's code a day. So, ouch. I really need you to stick to standards so it makes it really easy for me to read. It would be like trying to read a horror novel or a suspense novel or something like that, where instead of names, they're just doing X or Y or something like that. You know, it's like, no, that's not right.
But in the style thing, it did say that for iterators, you could use one letter, one
Okay.
character, which would be a letter.
Absolutely, the style will not kick. Your
Okay,
teacher will kick.
all right.
And
Good
that works
distinction.
also for things like, I don't know if they have them here, but events. So no E for events.
I would not write my code that way.
Okay.
I would.
I personally don't like it, but the E that is.
It's and
There are a couple things like
it's
that.
language
when it's like
agnostic in my
everyone
mind.
knows E is an event, and everyone knows I is an iterator, and like you can have really, really short logic, and everyone knows what it is. Like 99% of the time, I totally agree. Name your variables.
I like the 99%. It's good. As I said, I've done it myself when I'm in a hurry. I don't do that. Don't do that. Have good habits. Okay. La 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 la. Everything's case sensitive. They can be unlimited in length. Yes, don't make your variable 80 characters long, please. That's ridiculous. Special names, I talked about that a little bit, but I wanted to look specifically in here because there's going to be some debate. And that is,
I think the key is just
Where is
learn how to reach the underscore
Naming.
character.
It's
without-
near
I can't even click the stupid here.
Muscle memory.
Yeah,
There we go.
I would have to look now.
Give me a link. Okay. So now this is super important. Definitely something you want to have your attention on and do properly. I haven't talked about what a package or module or class is, so it's a little funky at this point. But if we look at variables here, they're lower with under. Now, internal also we haven't discussed because I haven't discussed what an object is yet, but internal variables, definitely an underscore preceding. So feel free to use underscores, but don't put one before and don't put one after because those are special. And over the next few weeks, I will teach you why they're special. But for the moment, just hold your breath, recognize that this is the proper way to write a variable. Yay, happiness. Now, if we are instantiating a class space class name in Google, classes are cat words. They've changed. They're now lower with under. So they've changed this, so that's good. Classes are camel case with the first leather capped. And functions are lowercase, just like variable names, which is where it gets a little strange. But pay attention, name things well, and you won't have a problem. Questions about naming. I understand there are some things in here you may not know about, like constants and functions and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk more about that coming up here shortly. I'm going to do more of a dance. Okay. Click the tab, click the tab. Naming conventions we talked about. Names, good. So what's the next section? I said 1.3.5. Talked about docstrings last time. Because it's right here, I'm going to mention it again. Always have docstrings, always have docstrings. If you don't know what a docstring is, it's what goes after your function. Here, I'm just going to bring up something. One of my wonderful modules. Here's something that's good. I updated this earlier. Docstrings at the top, docstrings underneath your class, docstrings underneath your class, and if we have specialized methods, discussions about what those are. This probably wasn't a great example, but attributes, all these kinds of things. Make sure to include your docstrings. We'll do more of that as we build things to write docstrings with. Not written anything yet. We got to get there. Before we start writing all kinds of functions and stuff, we have to know what to do, though. So I'm going to show you examples of each of these, but I'm going to stand up here a moment and reel them off. Addition, subtraction, multiplication. Ooh. Anyone?
Power.
Exponent. It also does something else special in Python. Carlos? Ooh, nice! It'll expand a keyword argument list, right? So if you give it a dictionary, it'll expand it out into a set of key value pairs. Really nice. Anyway, divide. Look it up.
Modulo.
Okay, modulus, good. Okay, now we're doing bit operations. Where are we going? Back and forth, right? And, or, yes,
No.
yes, exponential. And I don't even know what that character, oh, tilde.
No.
Not, yes, very good.
What was the one before
Oh, it's
tilde?
not.
Exponent,
Exclusive order?
I'll have to look it up again
Yes,
too. I think it has another function.
Less than.
Less than, greater than or equal to.
Oh, less than. Greater, that's greater than or equal to.
Less
So the
than,
first
greater
one is
than.
less than.
All right, there we go. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to,
Strictly.
Quality.
equal to, not equal, equal to. Are they the same? One of these things is not like another, right? Equals. If you use a single equal, that sets. It causes x to be equal to that value. We're not doing that, we're testing here. I want to see if these two things are the same.
Not equal.
Not equal, come on.
Deprecated.
Really bad, don't do this. Okay? Logical operators. And, or, is, not, in. Okay? When would I use and?
Putting two logical statements together and see if they're both true.
Yes, two truths. It requires true and true to equal true. Okay, this is Boolean logic. And I should probably write some Boolean logic up here just for fun. But actually, I have a pen. That'd probably be the easiest way to do this. Come on. No, that kind of pen. Okay, 2 seconds or less. Oh, they took a picture. All right, here we go. Sorry. Et cetera, ending in 1. Say the number.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8.
Okay, now we're gaining on it. So yeah, because we skipped here, right? Somebody's paying attention. So if I have 0 plus 1 in normal math, that's equal to 1. Okay? Now, if we start looking at these as logical conclusions, if we go 0 or 1 is equal to 1. 1 or 1? Right, exactly. We also have and. So 0 and 1?
0.
0, okay, good. So this is true of if this, if that, if. If you're ifing anything, you're going to end up using Boolean logic. Now, it looks like ands and ors and things like that, but it's actually bit operations, right? I'm causing bits to shift inside the central processing unit. It's just really easy with Python. And or is this, that. If I have x, is y. Are they the same thing? Is this, that? I use that for type checking a bunch.
Is that a reference check or like just a value check?
It's like equality, except more.
So you can compare objects and see if it's the same type of object. And
Not is the same as not here. In is super important, massively huge. Make sure you add this to your lexicon. If you're dealing with lists, use the word in. I'm going to give you an example right this second. We have our people list over here, right? People, I'm going to type it again so we see what we're dealing with. Got a list called people. There's in for you. Or in people. True.
So that means the number 4 is in the list, people.
Yeah.
Not there are 4 items in people.
No, that would be length, which I'd be happy to show you right
It's a
now.
list of objects.
Super fun. Okay. So if I made this something else. Right. I hate this keyboard. Make one more just for fun. House in houses. Print house. In. Happiness. Good. I use in a ton.
So in that last example that you just had, that was doing more than just a Boolean comparison. It's doing something applying to get house. And is in doing that? Or is... Okay. So something assigned something to house. Is that the in that did that or the for that did that?
The for did that.
The for did that.
Yes. Yeah. For is an iterator. And I'm iterating across this list. Man, I jumped way too far ahead by doing this. Okay, so we're used to this idea. This is an integer variable, right? We could make this a string variable. And now it's a string type. Now, if we do something more fancy, anybody?
Decimal.
Float by default. Now, don't use it. Assign decimal to it. And just for fun, no, it's from decimal, import decimal. Now x equals.
why is it decimal dot decimal? Is there like more
Where?
decimal types?
Where?
That's
the last line.
Decimal.
Oh, here?
Yeah, is there more in the package decimal than
This is
just
the model.
Yeah,
decimal?
yes, most certainly.
Okay.
So integer, strings. Right now we have something a little more fancy. Well, we have booleans too.
Why is that? Why is that inside the angle braces? Those when you say type of X. Why
Because it's a class. This is a type. It's just specifying that it's a type. It'll do that on any type that you try and type out. So if I typed X right now, I would get that out for this too. It just specifies what it is. Type. Integers, booleans, decimals, floats. Basic variable types.
Double.
I'm sorry?
You have double.
Double, that's precision. And you set your precision with decimal. So no, but yes. So base 10. Or base 16 in this case, sorry. Man, I'd have to look. I'm
Okay.
certain, 100% certain, but it'd be a string, right? So, yeah.
Whereas 3 has a hex representation.
But decimal is also a string. So that's interesting.
It's freedom's number.
Yeah, but you can still, still do a lot of stuff.
So happiness. And what I showed you a minute ago is a list. And a list goes in between these brackets. Right? 1, 2, that's a list. If I type this, it says list. Ta-da! Lists are awesome. I use lists all the time. Now, did I assign it to anything? No, I didn't. But is x, okay, let's make x a different thing. Equals 3, 4. Right? So now we have x is equal to 3, 4. We didn't assign 1, 2 to anything. But what if I do this? Result?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Is it a list or is it a multi-dimensional?
Good question, Ben. So lists, super flexible. Wow, flexible, crazy, amazingly flexible. So you can combine them, you can and them, you can or them, you can do all kinds of really great things, iterating across them, getting the data to and from them. So I use lists a lot. Where were we? So I have variables, all kinds of stuff. These are the answers. Haha. See, if I had gone a little bit further, you would have had the answers rather than just the questions. So that's good. What else were we doing? 1.4.1. Moving down. Oh yeah, we get to do the fun stuff. Yeah. Strings rock. I so love working with strings. So these are great examples. If you're sitting at a Python terminal, I would just type these in. Seems to time out. It's interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that. I know Carlos's is still running. Thank you, Carlos. All right. So, how to use strings, right? So, S1, string 1, A, B, C, D, right? These quotes are correct. S2 equals double quote XYZ double quote. What does Sensei say?
No.
Nope. Okay. No. Now you can put double quotes inside your single quotes, but double quotes are special. Don't just use them willy-nilly. Single quotes, please. Now, if we're working in HTML, it's exactly the opposite. So you need to recognize what language you're in. Okay, single quote, ABCD, S2, XYZ, S3, double quote, strangeness, right? This is a doc string node. Triple quote, ending in triple quote. It's everything in between here goes into S3. Very, very flexible, easy to use. Now we get to start having fun. I've used these on so many occasions when I display things in templates, right? I have a sentence, I need it all to be uppercase. That's dot upper. I have a sentence, I'm looking for the word cat, find cat, unless you know regular expressions, at which point I would probably build a regular expression instead. The happy, oh boy, I'm not even gonna read it. Find kitten, no, doesn't exist. So we have basic search, we have basic upper and lowercase. There's also things for capitalizing the first letter of a sentence or first letter of a word, cap word. Anyway, lots of really cool functions attached to a string. How could you figure out all the functions you could use on a string?
Helps.
How could you figure out all the functions you can use on a string?
dir.
Woo! That's one of my favorite things about Python. So, S1, like they had in the example. Yeah, memorize the example,
It was ABCE in the
right? And if we type it, what is it? It's a string. Ooh, now we talked about getting all the functions available for that. Lots of them. Note this. If you want your string centered, you can tell it how many characters you want it to be, and it'll simply return that center for you. Capitalize, exactly what they sound like. Bunch of additional functions like encode and decode that's not really stuff you have to worry about. But things like is alpha, is digit, these are Boolean operators. Is this a number or not? Is it a string or not? Is it lowercase? You know, all these neat things available to you. Some of them you may never use, but things like starts with, I use a bunch. And I'll give you an example of that because I like it so much. Ben?
So like things like is digit, right? So if you have a string that says like A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, and then you run is digit, is it like both? It's just, is there a digit in it? Like what's the wow, what I expected.
Right? Because it's not. Let's try is alpha.
If you had a string that was the number 3, though, I think it would
Or
turn through.
Well, my question is, what if you have a string that's composed of numbers and letters?
False.
It would be false.
Okay. Oh yeah.
A.
Sweet.
Is there a way you can check what the function would take in? Like, let's say join on the strings.
What was the question?
Is there a way to check like what the function's parameters are, like the arguments that it takes in, just based on the name? Like we had join up there.
One
on
moment.
the strings.
So it's split standalone. So you can look things up. I understand what you're asking for. It's that string is what it just handed me back. I'm trying to get you exactly what you're asking for. Not easily. Most of the time I look in the docs anyway because
Yeah.
they'd be better commented. But there's no, I didn't think so. Anyway,
Is help the same thing as dir except more verbose or something?
no, help is doc strings.
Okay. If you put help and then str, it gives you a bunch of help lines too.
Yeah.
In parentheses.
Yeah, sorry. Is that the object type?
I say it gives you all that.
Yeah, that's the doc string.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, yes. More in the future. Wow, that's a lot on that one. Really fun. Okay. Where were we? All right. Back on track. Replace and then just other really cool string functions. Find, same deal, we just talked about that. Yeah, here's where I wanted to get to. So we're looking at state equals California. Here's what we're focusing on. See this percent? Percent means variable to follow. And in this case, S means string. So I am putting a string into this string. So outside of this, we use what is modulus, but in this case, we're string replace with this variable. So we set state to California, so it ends up saying it never rains in sunny California. Question. Super important question.
Is that a pound sign? Oh, no, that's a percent before the
Yeah,
sign?
percent.
Okay.
Modulus. Super important. I use this a ton. Okay, good. Happiness. Width, height, depth. Print of the box is digit with height depth. So now box is 2432.8. Really nice, quick string replacement. Super fast, compiles on the fly. Really, really nice.
The third one in that after depth, it has a comma. Is that needed?
Good question.
Yeah, good question.
No,
I wouldn't think so.
Carlos?
It is needed.
You guys? Let's type it out.
It's the definition of a list, right?
Well, it's a tuple in that
it's
case.
a tuple, yeah,
So,
seems to work the way they're coming on.
yeah. Look, I think we're going to be money though. How about I copy and paste rather than type the whole thing out? I suggest not. I don't think we need it. And I'd suggest. Oh, well, it would help if I typed everything in. All right, now let's try that again. Right, and we'll take the comma out. Right. So, interestingly enough, though, yes, take the comma out. I'm not even going to discuss it right this second because I'll lose most of you. So yes, no comma. Bad writer. So I wanted to get this far along because it allows you to start writing Python to files, and that's kind of a good thing. So I know I only have 10 minutes left, but if you all are into getting more information, we can try hacking at that. What do you think? Okay, so we'll do this the easy way. Notepad, right? Should work just fine. Okay, I'm going to put it on my desktop so it's easy to find. Where are we? Here we are. Happiness. Now if I right click it here, I can open it with your wonderful Python win, which will run it. But I wanted to prove to you it's just a text file. It's nothing but a text file. Happiness is a beautiful text file. And now I need to run that text file. I'm going to move it someplace a little easier to work with. My desktop is rather hard to work with.
Did you say it is .py or .txt?
.py from within Notepad. It doesn't mind if you save it with a different extension. As you can see, I use my temp directory quite often. Ooh. Okay, so I moved it to my temp directory. I'm going to open and I'm going to stick with that command window. temp, and it is my Python test.py.
Ooh.
Super fancy, huh? Nope. Happiness. Soap. And I'm going to bring that file up over here so I can prove to you yet again what we're dealing with here. In my temp folder, there's the file. You can right click it, open with. How about some Notepad action, whatever you want. I'm going to use Notepad++ because I want to plug it as a really nice tool. Okay, now I'm also going to create another file. And that file is just going to have some plain text in it. I'm also going to put it in my temp directory. So I now have two files I'm dealing with in my temp directory, randomfile.txt and my Python test. So we're inside this my Python test. I'm going to change it from hello world to the same thing that they're doing in your wonderful book. Now we changed the file name here, didn't we?
Yes.
So it's random file. We're opening it for write. So now we're going to write something to it, right? There's already stuff in it, right? Money, money, money. Make sure you close your file, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit nicer in a future episode. The answer is with. Okay, now we're going to run that file again. Now what happened?
Open the file.
Edited the file. Change.
Uh-oh, look at that. Let's go over there and have a look. Opened it, wrote to that file, closed that file. Happiness. So now you have file out. Now you know how to make a Python file, I hope, right? It's a text file that has a .py extension. Simple. Put any Python you want in it. To run it, go to the folder that that Python file is in, type it. Done. It'll just run. It's that simple. Really, really easy. Now what I've done here is help you write to and from a text file, which is something I have done on many, many projects in the past. So I think that's a super useful thing for you to have available to you. And in this case, he was dealing with it for working with strings. So you can have large strings to take in and out. You can also iterate. Now we're dealing with iterators again, so I should probably discuss them. This 4 is an iterator. 1, 2, 3, 4 is called a range in Python. And if I want every item in that range, I need to iterate across it. So let's go back into Python here. X is a variable. It is of type list. Excellent. Okay, so now if I just print X, I get the entire list. If I want one item at a time, I iterate across it. So 4 is an iterator, and we're going to use it in many, many, many ways. So for item in X, right, print item, that's exactly what we're doing here for item in, right? So I'm going to switch back to your book so we can look at that example more closely. We made this text file earlier, line 1, 2, 3, right? So now I'm going to open this file again, but this time not for write, for read. And now I'm going to iterate across each line in the file. And by default, when you open a file, as you iterate across it, it's actually a generator, so it returns it to you line by line. You can get it in bigger chunks, you can get it all at once, but if you run an iterator across it this way, it's going to give you line by line.
So even if, no matter what you name the for length, it's still going to be line by line unless you specify. something
Yes,
else.
unless you do an additional, an other method on it.
Yeah.
So just by default. So good. Text file in, text file out. So if you know how to move text in and out of the file, you should be able to do something fancy at this point. I hope.
Can you keep the existing contents or just what are you thinking? How do you do it?
Can you append the existing contents? I believe
You have
so.
to
I
open
don't
it for a
think.
pen.
I'm sorry.
You have to open it for a pen instead of write.
I was just trying to think. Is that W plus?
I think it's A.
Oh, A. Well, there you go. I just hadn't done it in a while. Did they show that example? No, they don't. Answer your question? Okay, good. So, yay, now we're going to talk about strings as what they really are.
Before we do that, can we do
Yeah.
a little bit more on the for?
Sure, sure, I'd love to.
So with for, I'm assuming what you're saying is that
At the
it
top
will,
right here.
whatever your list is, it will start at the beginning of the list and go to the end of the list.
Unless you tell it
By
otherwise.
Each item individually.
Unless you tell it otherwise.
Okay. Which you would do by.
Oh, lots of ways you can do that. Bear with me just a moment because I'm going. Okay, a string is a bunch of characters, right? Now, if you look at that in RAM, each letter of that string is a byte. Did I lose anybody? Each letter of that string is a byte. S1 equals A, B, C, D. So if each one of those letters is a byte, how many bytes is that string? 4. Now, if we tell Python to iterate across the string, that string becomes a list, and it iterates across it quite nicely. So let's go ahead and do that. They're hinting at that in this example here. So let's make x equal to A, B, C, D. Now, for item in x. Pretty cool. Now, x. Let's make y an actual list. So if I say y, it gives me the whole thing. If I say y0, it gives me record 0. Y0 gives me 1. 0, 1, 2, 3. Did I make it confusing enough by naming everything wrong?
No, we need to make it more confusing.
Okay, so it's just really important to note that 0 is the index in Python. It's really important to note. And when we get to Django, Django does not allow 0 as a record ID. So it's a real pain in the buttocks. So 0 is this record. So if I put y1, the result would be 2. If I put y4, the result would be 1.
Index
Oh, I
operation.
love that there's a debate. It's so great.
Error.
They ain't one of those. It don't exist, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the index of this list. Index out of range. 4, there's only 4. If we start at 0, right, 3. So 3 is my max. Happiness, I'm going to type Y3 so nobody has obsessive moments about, well, what's the right answer? 3, because I would obsess, right? Everybody happy. Okay, goodness. So let's switch back.
How do you look backward on the folder?
I'll get to that. The answer is reverse.
Yeah, reverse, okay.
You just say dot reverse.
That reverse,
And
oh,
you're
okay,
happy.
got it.
Okay, so x is equal to what?
1.
Oh,
Right. Right? So it makes it really nice. Ooh. How about X? Even I get my variables wrong sometimes. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. A string is also a list. Python just does that, happiness. So you can index any part of your list instantaneously. Now let's get fancy. So which one? Do you want ABCD? We'll do ABCD. Oh, fancy, fancy. From beginning to 2, not including. So 0, 1. Ooh, fancy, fancy. Fancy, fancy. I'm going backwards now. And it works like really, really well. Ooh.
Can we just get the odd number of the string? A and C or B and D?
Oh, you want to try and do this?
We have A, B, C, D, right? I want
Okay.
our way to look for the 0 and 1. Want to get A and C,
First and third.
the first and third.
So what's the result be AC?
So
Two operations, right?
Yeah,
It's two operations.
On the for loop, you would go.
I
count by
missed,
twos.
but
So there's no function to do it in one. Okay, anyway,
nice try. Keep it. But you can make. Was there another question? Did I miss something?
But it seems like there's got to be a way with the for loop to do skip, just like do odd numbers.
yes.
Start in the middle, count by threes.
Well, inside those square brackets,
and
can you put
not go
a
until you reach
variable?
the end, which we do easily.
That's cool.
Okay, so I would do. I need a long enough string. And it's X. Don't tell me I can't. Okay, so this is a little further than I expected to get. Good job. Range is very cool. X range is even better. So if you're using range, look up X range. You probably should be using X range. Anyway, range goes from start to finish at this interval. Now, if I'm trying to parse a list for whatever kind of strangeness, I create a generator for it that gives me the list of what I'm looking for, and then I look up those items. Pretty straightforward, and lists run everything in Python. I can't even emphasize that enough. I just use lists as a constant part of my day. All right. So file in, file out. Oh wow, lists are next time. So that's good. You're a little ahead of the process here. Right? See here they start talking about lists and all the rest of that. So we're out of time anyway. I want to emphasize that today I will send out the link to the SharePoint, and you guys should all be using that. Next time, class 3, we're doing lists and tuples and compound statements. I may actually expand that now that we actually got the list today, so make sure you do your reading.
Looking for someone who knows how to deal with SharePoint.
Anybody a SharePoint expert?
Okay.
Really? Maybe it's not the right tool then.
Pretty sure
Okay,
it's not
yeah,
the
we got a
right tool,
volunteer.
no matter.
So,
What's the homework?
class 3, 1.4.2 lists and tuples, 1.6 compound statements. And we'll, I don't know, we may get further than that. The further we can push, the better for everybody, because there's so much we could cover. Any other questions? Is everybody happy? Is this going well for everybody?
Yes.
Going really well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next time around.
Thanks.
Hey, Michael. Hey, yes.
So my command prompt is not working with Bloom 4. I guess pressing I
Yeah,
so much.
because it's all like, okay, what goes underneath that?
Like real life.
Space in and add things to it, so it's waiting.
Sorry about that.
The COBOL is
Okay.
what cost it.
That was